Hello and welcome to another vintage day. I'm going through my linen chest today. Well, I have a few places that I store my linens, but one is in a chest that actually came from the family home in France. It's this wonderful antique vintage trunk, an old traveling trunk. And I think there's some fun stories with my linens that you might be interested to hear. Now, a lot of people say you shouldn't keep your linens in anything but a cedar chest. But as long as you have some cotton, plain cotton linen, I use pillowcases a lot or parts of sheets to protect your linens from whatever they can touch. They're going to stay in pretty good shape. So a lot of the linens that I have in my collection actually came from France when I lived there, and they were gifted to me by the family. So we'll take a look at some of those and some of the stories behind them. At this lovely piece here, lots of work on it. It is a fine linen embroidery with bobbin lace on it. It's a wonderful piece in pristine condition, and I use it a fair amount actually. I have this one out quite a bit. Here's another wonderful piece. Now this has on it some interesting thing that was called, I believe it's couche cornet, and it's something that you buy by the yard and then you sew it on into whatever pattern that you like. It's very textured, very three-dimensional. You do have to be careful about what you set on it because it can get tippy because of how high the stuff sets up on it. But the amount of work on it, it's just beautiful. And I can sit for hours and look at these linens. This nice crisp linen piece has some drawn work on it all the way around. It's just so microscopically tiny that I can't see it without a magnifying glass how small the intertwined stitches are on this piece. Now this next piece is pretty much what really got my aunt started knowing that I really liked linens. It was shortly after we arrived in France, and this tiny little town near the family home was having a market. And so my husband and I went to the market and we're looking around, and in one of the booths there was this incredible big heavy linen sheet. I would say it's almost a summer blanket. And on the front of it were the initials BT for my husband, Bernard Trotebas. And we absolutely loved it. Of course, we were just starting out, so we didn't have a lot of money. And they were just asking too much for our budget at the time. And our aunt saw us over at the booth looking at that. And she went by later, saw what we were looking at, and that it had our initials. And she thought it would really make a lovely wedding gift for us. So she went ahead and purchased this for us and gave it to us as a wedding gift. I have no idea how old it is. I am guessing probably early 1900s, but it's just a beautiful piece, and the workmanship on it is wonderful. But that kind of started it all. So once my aunt realized that I loved old linens, one day she took me upstairs and opened up this big armoire, and it was full of antique linens. And this is the time when I heard this story. So my husband's great-grandmother came over from Italy to France, and her name was Emilia Concini. And she had a daughter, Josepha, and the two of them actually did a lot of the embroidery for all of the monogram pieces that went through the department store Galeries Lafayette in Nice, France. So imagining that a lot of the work that was done was between the 1900s and the 1930s. But there are some pieces in here that are older than that because you can tell by the initials that were embroidered on their pieces. So I couldn't believe the amount of linens that were coming out of this cabinet. So my husband's grandmother at one time had already split the linens between his mother and his aunt. And what was coming out of this cabinet were stacks of a dozen matching napkins at a time, but most often about 24 matching napkins at a time. So when they had split the linens prior to that, did that mean each matching set had 48 napkins? What's really sad, at one point my husband's mother took all of her linens in to be cleaned, and when she went to pick them up, they were all gone. The cleaners had no idea where they went. So she was out all of her vintage linens from her mother. So his aunt was kind enough to share this Trousseau with me. And the workmanship, because they did this professionally, is absolutely beautiful. And the Galerie Lafayette, where they did all their work for, was really the outstanding store to go get things done. Now I know that some of these are older than that because of the initials on it. There was a fashion of all classes for the young gals to put their initials on their linens. So when they were young, it was their personal initials, and then as soon as they were betrothed, then they would have put their fiancé's initial first and then the last name. Now the Trousseau was always the property of the bride. An example of some work that she did when she was younger, so Amelia, and this is AC for Amelia Cancini, these were made before she was betrothed and she was married. So that's going to make these perhaps pre-1900 on this piece here, on these pieces. And they are absolutely beautiful. Lovely feel to the linen. This is another piece. We're not quite sure where it falls in the family line, but the fabric feels very old just by the way it is made. But the initials on it are EC. So I'm assuming Cancini, but we don't know who the E is for. So it might have been somebody earlier in the family, so I'm guessing this piece is definitely earlier, way earlier than 1900. And there's some really, really tiny work on here, and I'll show you a better picture of that. But it's a good, heavy linen piece. It was meant to last, even with all of this drawn work in it. And this one fascinates me. This was also given to me by his aunt. Not sure of where this falls into the family line, but there is this incredible tiny V put onto it. So fine is the work. But we're not quite sure how this fits into the family line, because now that his aunt is gone and so is his mother, there's not really anybody to ask any more questions to. But the fine, fine workmanship on this is amazing. I'm almost afraid to use them because it's so beautiful. This is another set, and it is OB on this one. And again, we don't know how that quite fits into the family. So also very, very old. This is an incredible piece of damask, and it's a hunting scene. And it's typically an older piece when it gets very detailed and it has all the different animals on it and scenic pictures. And the way the light catches this is just amazing. It has the two dogs running after the stag, and then it has the hunters also. And off in the distance, you can see a chateau that the riders are headed towards. So beautiful. So going through all these linens made me think about the trousseaux that women had. And trousseaux really actually went back into the ancient times, and they were really popular during the Renaissance period, especially in France. It would consist mainly of linens, bedding, petticoats, nightgowns, and items used for the household. And a lot of them were family heirlooms that were passed down through time. So what is a trousseau? Well, it actually comes from a French word, trousse, which is like a bundle or to put in a package. So this would have been items collected through a young woman's life as she prepared for the day she would be married. So in Victorian England, if the bride was well-to-do, she might have had a trousseau tea, where she could have put everything that was in her trousseau out for viewing for everyone. Now, in some families in France, they not only made a trousseau with all the bed linens and things needed for the new home, they also built an armoire or a cupboard, and they would fill this with all of the linens. Now in Brittany, they would take the entire cupboard and put it on a cart that was decorated with flowers, and they would parade this through town, and there'd be lots of singing and dancing until they arrived at the house. So when the procession arrived at the new home and the cupboard was installed, the mother of the bride would then put all the linens into place, folding them to make it actually look a little bit more than it actually was, because it was quite a thing of pride to show what a beautiful trousseau your daughter has. So then the father, at the right point, would open the door to the bedroom and allow the presentation to happen. And also the priest would come in and he would bless the linen closet and the bed. And the evening ended with a family meal at the groom's house. The modern version of this nowadays is known as a hope chest, a dowry chest, a cedar chest, or a glory box. Generally, they are made from cedar, though, to help protect the linens from moss. The Lane Furniture Company was a popular manufacturer of hope chests, and they were really popular from the 1900s, but they started to fade out in the 1970s. It became a tradition to receive a hope chest upon your graduation. I know my mom had one, as you can see in this photo. And she kept her wedding dress in it and all these little things that she'd collected over time as we were growing up. There were baby booties in it, our baby books are in it, also a long ponytail of mine wrapped in a ribbon. By the time I graduated, you no longer collected and prepared for the day you were going to get married. Because everything had become ready-made, you didn't need to spend time as a younger person preparing napkins and things for your future life. They now have become ready-made gifts that you give for a wedding, such as tablecloths or embroidered towels. It's at your fingertips. You don't need to wait. Well, I don't know about you, but I have this bad habit of hanging on to things and keeping them safe, not wanting to use them because they're just too pretty. Well, what's the point of having them if you're not going to use them? So I am making another change this year in my life, and I'm going to get these beautiful things out and bring them to life and enjoy them. A lot of them are going to be going on picnics with me. So I hope you do the same. If you're someone like me who thinks things are too good to use, take it out and use it. Life's too short. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time here on another Vintage Day.